three children stood barefoot on the auction block, sacks over their heads. They didn't flinch, didn't sway, didn't even hold hands. Just stood still, like shadows cut out of burlap. The youngest couldn't have been more than 5. The tallest, maybe 10. Their clothes were threadbare, feet caked with dry earth, and not a sound came from any of them. No cough, no whimper, no breath too loud. They were being sold as a set. 3 for the price of 2, the auctioneer barked, his voice echoing across the cracked yard. Don't ask names, they ain't got none. Don't ask stories, nobody knows. They're quiet, healthy, and already broke from crying. The crowd didn't cheer. They just stared, some curious, some ashamed, and one woman, standing near the back of the crowd in a sun-faded cloak and dusty boots, didn't move at all. Her name was Ada Granger, and she had not come here to buy anyone. But something in her legs started walking toward that stage before her brain gave permission. She didn't know why. Not until one of the children lifted their head slightly under the sack, and Ada saw the faintest outline of a scar on a small wrist. Her breath caught, because she knew that scar. Let's go back to where it all started. Ada lived 2 days west of Dry Hollow, near the ridge line that split the grasslands from the canyon. Her cabin was small, square, and built with the kind of stubborn wood that didn't ask for compliments. The land was dry but manageable. 2 goats, a cow that no longer gave milk, and enough hens to keep her from going hungry. She kept to herself, not because she feared people, but because she knew what it was to lose them. She had once been a wife. She had once been a mother. And then, almost overnight, she'd become neither. Fire, fever, and a letter that came too late. She hadn't cried in years, hadn't prayed either, but she had endured. Until the day she heard about the orphan auction in Lantry's yard. She'd meant to just pass through town, buy grain, pick up a coil of fence wire, and be back before sunset. Instead, she found herself drawn by the sound of a hammer striking wood. Next up, a special set, 3 siblings or so we believe. The crowd shifted. She stepped closer. The children were led up by a rail-thin man with a whip coiled at his hip and a coin pouch swinging loose from his belt. They don't talk, he said. Don't fight. Don't bite. Found /M near Black Hollow after the raids. Someone asked if they were native. Can't say, the man muttered. Could be mixed. Could be nothing but trouble. But trouble's cheap today. People chuckled uneasily. Ada didn't. Her hand hovered near her coin purse. Then one of the children tilted their head ever so slightly, and Ada saw the scar. A thin white line, like a rope burn, wrapped halfway around the wrist. She knew that mark. She had wrapped that wound herself once, years ago. Late at night, with shaking hands and whispered reassurances. Easy now. It'll stop bleeding soon. The child hadn't cried then either, and now they stood silent again. Bag over the head. Sun beating down. Heart still beating. Somehow, Ada took a step forward, her voice low. I'll take them. The auctioneer paused. All 3. All 3. You want to inspect first? No. You sure? Ada reached into her satchel and counted out what little she had. The man took it without question. The crowd muttered, but no one stopped her. The children were led down by a boy barely older than them. He removed the rope gently, didn't look them in the eye. Ada reached for the youngest. They flinched. She stepped back. It /us all right, she said, softer now. Come if you /re-willing. And slowly, like leaves moving in a breeze that didn't blow, the 3 children followed her off the stage. Not toward safety, not toward comfort, but toward something they hadn't had in a long time. A choice. They didn't speak on the wagon ride home. Ada didn't press. The sacks were gone, but they kept their eyes down. Ate the jerky she offered, drank water like it hurt to swallow. As the sun dipped behind the ridge, she guided the horse up the slope to her cabin. When they arrived, the children didn't run inside. They stood outside the doorway waiting. She nodded. This is home. Yours if you want it. Still nothing. She lit a lantern, opened the door, and left it wide. They entered in silence. And when the youngest sat on the rug near the hearth, legs crossed, chin trembling but no tears, Ada finally allowed her breath to ease. Not because she had done something good, but because something impossible was beginning to feel real. She had brought 3 strangers into her house, but one of them had a scar she remembered. And that meant one thing: one of them knew her name. The fire crackled. The room was quiet, and just as Ada started to rise from her chair to fetch blankets for the floor, the middle child, the one with dark, unbrushed hair and the lean arms of someone who'd gone hungry more than once, looked up from the corner. Their voice was small, dry, but the word was unmistakable. "Mama!" Ada froze. The lamp flickered. Her knees gave out. She sank slowly to the floor, not in fear, but in disbelief, because the last time she had heard that word, it was torn from her arms by fire and blood and men shouting through smoke. And now a voice in her home had said it again. Not as a memory, not as a dream, but as recognition. Her lips parted, but she couldn't speak. She just looked at the child and whispered the name she hadn't said in years. Annie? They didn't sleep in the loft that night. Ada made up beds on the floor beside the stove, layering old quilts she hadn't touched in years. Ones that still smelled faintly of cedar and something older. The kind of warmth woven when she was someone's wife, someone's mother. The 3 children lay down in silence. Even the youngest, who still clutched the corner of the blanket in her sleep, didn't whimper once. But the middle child, the one who'd spoken, kept their eyes open long after the lantern went out. Ada sat at the table, candle burned down to a stub, hands shaking. "Mama." It wasn't a guess. It wasn't a plea. It was a memory. The voice didn't sound the same, but the shape of the word was right. The hesitation, the ache buried inside it. Could it be? Could this be the child she lost? She hadn't even buried a body. The fire had taken the house and everything with it. They'd told her the children were gone. Dead. All 3. Taken in the flames or lost in the chaos when the raid hit. She had believed them because believing anything else hurt worse. Now one of them was here. But which one? And who were the other 2? In the morning, she hitched the wagon and rode into town with the children seated behind her, bundled in blankets and still too quiet. The town of Dry Hollow didn't gasp when they arrived. It just stared. She tied the reins outside the general store. The bell rang as she stepped in. Harriet Morrison, behind the counter, blinked slow. "Morning, Ada," she said, looking past her toward the children through the window. "That your new litter?" "They're staying with me," Ada said calmly. Harriet didn't answer. She just folded a sack of sugar slower than necessary. Outside, the blacksmith paused mid-hammer, sweat glistening on his brow. A ranch hand crossed the street, pretending not to look. Children were hushed by their mothers. Everyone saw. Everyone had questions. But no one said it aloud yet. At the church that Sunday, she felt the eyes before the door even creaked. They sat near the back, away from the lantern light. Ada in her old wool shawl, the 3 children pressed close beside her. Not one word passed between them through the hymns or the sermon. The youngest traced a knot in the bench with her finger. The oldest watched the preacher like he was trying to decipher a language he'd never heard. Afterward, people lingered in the yard. Some approached. Others didn't. Mrs. Kendall was first. "That one there," she said, pointing with her chin toward the girl with the quiet eyes. "Looks like she's got Indian blood." Ada met her gaze. "She's hungry and kind. That's all I care about." Mrs. Kendall sniffed and walked away. Next came Samuel Tibbetts, the schoolteacher's husband. "Folks say you bought him," he said. Not angry, just cautious. "I took them," Ada said, "and I'll keep them if that's all right with you." He didn't smile, but he didn't scowl either. "Just keep 'em close to your skirts," he said. "World's cruel to children who don't belong." Then he walked off. Children who don't belong. The words sat heavy. Ada turned to find the 3 of them standing like statues near the edge of the yard, unsure if they were allowed to smile, to run, to be. That's when the preacher approached. Reverend Colby was a stiff man with a stiff collar. "Ada," he said, voice low, "I think it's noble what you've done. But the town, well, they don't know these children. Don't know where they're from, who their people are." "I know enough," she said. He frowned. "Grief plays tricks, Ada. I'm not grieving. I'm remembering." He tried to soften. "You understand why people are wary." "No," she said plainly. "I understand why they're cowards." Then she took the children by the hands, one on each side, and walked away. Back at the cabin, the wind picked up. They spent the afternoon boiling potatoes and folding laundry. No one spoke of church or the town or the way Mrs. Kendall's voice cut sharper than the sermon. After supper, as the fire crackled low, Ada knelt before the middle child. "Who are you?" she asked softly. The child looked at her for a long time, then carefully pulled their sleeve up to the elbow. Another scar, this one across the forearm, thin, curved. Ada swallowed hard. "I remember when you fell," she whispered. "You ran through the orchard chasing a kite. I told you not to run with the stick in your hand." The child said nothing, but they didn't look away, and the quiet between them wasn't cold anymore. It was recognition. Still, doubts crept in. She had lost 3 children. She had buried them in her mind 100 times. Could this really be one of them? Had all 3 survived? Or just one? And the other 2? Were they strangers? Survivors who clung to each other in the dark? She couldn't ask. She was afraid the answer might break her again. That night, a knock came at the door. Ada opened it slow. It was Sheriff Boone. Hut in Hunt. Eyes weary. "Evening," he said. "What brings you?" He looked past her, saw the 3 children curled by the fire, wrapped in blankets, breathing slow and even. "Some folks are saying they don't belong here," he said. "That you've lost your footing." Ada stepped outside, closing the door behind her. "They can say what they like. They think you're mistaking grief for charity. I think they're mistaking cruelty for caution." Boone sighed. "I won't stop you, Ada. You're within your rights. But if something goes sideways, I'll be the one they blame." "Then blame me," she said. "Not them." He looked at her, really looked, and maybe, just for a moment, he saw it too. That it wasn't grief twisting her choices. It was memory, and maybe love. He tipped his hat and left. Later that night, as the embers dimmed, the middle child whispered into the darkness. "Am I really Annie?" Ada sat up from her chair, heart pounding. The child stared at her from the shadows. "I want to be. I remember your hands, the humming, the smell of honey in the mornings." Ada's voice caught. "Then yes," she whispered. "You're Annie." The child nodded once and lay back down, but Ada stayed awake long after, wondering if love could rewrite the truth, and if sometimes truth was less important than the belonging that love offered anyway. It began with smoke. Not the kind that dances gently from a chimney, the kind that rises in columns just beyond the ridge. Black, thick, telling of something burned not by accident, but by intent. Ada saw it from her cabin steps as she watered the little row of potatoes the children had planted. Her hand paused mid-pour. Her breath slowed. The children saw it too. The youngest dropped her tin cup. The tallest stepped quietly behind Ada's skirts, eyes fixed on the far-off hills. They knew what that smoke meant. They'd seen it before. By noon, a rider came, a courier from the next town over Bent Creek. Young, dust-covered, pale beneath his freckles. He handed Ada a folded note with shaking fingers and didn't wait to be thanked. The letter was from a Bent Creek preacher, one she didn't know, but the name at the bottom wasn't what stopped her. It was the words written across the middle in rushed, stern ink. 3 children stolen from a settlement church house. Escaped 2 months ago. If seen, return immediately. They are not your family. Ada lowered the note slowly, then looked at the children playing in the yard, digging tiny ditches, making rivers of muddy water for their makeshift doll. The middle child, Annie, she still whispered at night, was drawing in the dirt with a stick. Ada couldn't breathe. She read the letter again, and then she tore it in half. The next morning, Sheriff Boone returned. This time he wasn't alone. Reverend Colby rode beside him. They dismounted slowly, respectfully. But the tension was clear. Ada met them at the porch, arms folded, face unreadable. "We've had correspondence," the sheriff said. "From Bent Creek." "I burned it," she replied. "Figured you might." Reverend Colby cleared his throat. "They claim those children escaped a Christian orphanage. That they weren't abandoned, just disobedient." "Does being quiet count as disobedience now?" she asked. "They say one girl broke a window with a rock and threatened to run if anyone came near." Ada didn't blink. "Sounds like someone who'd been caged. They're asking for their return." "I'm not giving them back." Boone shifted his weight. "Ada." She stepped down one stair. Firm, not aggressive. "If you came here to take them, you'll need more than polite conversation." Reverend Colby sighed. "You have no legal claim. They were sold. By a man who had no right." Ada stepped closer. "Neither do you." The silence stretched. Then the sheriff looked at the reverend and muttered, "We're done here." "But," I said, "we're done." They mounted up, turned, and rode off without another word. But Ada could see it in Boone's back, the weight of pressure rising behind him. The tide hadn't turned yet, but it was building. That night, a rock broke the front window. Ada bolted upright from her cot. The children didn't scream. They just clung together in the corner, eyes wide, breathing fast. She grabbed the shotgun from behind the stove and stepped outside. Nothing but stars and silence. Until she saw the white chalk. Words scrawled across her porch steps. "Thief, liar, witch." She stared at them until her hands stopped shaking. Then she grabbed a pail of water and washed them clean. The children watched her do it. And for the first time since she'd brought them home, the oldest one spoke aloud. "They'll come back." Ada set the pail down gently. "So will we," she said. She went to town the next day. Not for grain, not for flour, but for nails. Dozens of them. She boarded up the side windows, strengthened the hinges on the barn, moved the children's bedding farther from the doors, taught the middle one how to hold the shotgun just in case, not to fire it, just to understand it. "They think we're animals," she told them as they sat at dinner that night. "But we're not. We're just lost people learning how to stay put." The girl they called Annie nodded. The youngest reached for her hand. "Will they kill us?" she asked. Ada didn't answer. She didn't know. 2 nights later, the drums began. Not real ones, but close enough. Pots and pans, beaten with sticks, by a group of townsfolk that came up the hill after dusk. They didn't bring torches, just noise. They stood at the edge of the field and banged. Over and over. Bang, bang, bang. Until the chickens flew from their roost and the youngest child cried into Ada's lap. She didn't open the door, didn't shout, didn't give them the satisfaction of rage. She just held the girl close and whispered, "They'll tire before we do." And sure enough, they did. By morning, the field was empty again, except for a small pile of stones left on the path. Warning or threat, Ada didn't care. She scattered them with her boot. At church the following Sunday, Ada walked in alone. Let the town see her eyes. Let them know she was not afraid. Not anymore. Harriet Morrison wouldn't look at her. Reverend Colby paused mid-sermon when he spotted her, stuttered on the word compassion, then skipped to the next verse. But Sheriff Boone met her in the yard afterward. "Word is Bent Creek's sending someone," he said. "A lawman?" "No. Worse." She raised an eyebrow. "Some woman who calls herself Sister Merritt. Runs the place they escaped from. Says she remembers one of them personally." Ada's jaw tightened. "She's not taking them. She might try. I won't let her." He touched the brim of his hat. "I believe you." Then he rode off again, dust curling behind him like a warning cloud. Ada stood still, sun burning her shoulders, heart steady, because danger had arrived. And she was ready. She arrived in a black buggy, drawn by a dun-colored mare with a cross stitched into its bridle. Sister Merritt. A tall, sharp-jawed woman with eyes like steel nails and lips that seemed allergic to softness. She wore gray linen, buttoned high to the neck, and carried a satchel that might have once held scriptures, but now hung heavy with something colder. Sheriff Boone was there when she arrived. He met her at the church steps, but she didn't dismount, just looked around the dry little town and asked, "Where is the woman who took them?" Boone nodded toward the ridge. "Cabins 2 hours west. She's not hiding." "Neither am I," Sister Merritt said. Then she flicked the reins. Ada saw her coming long before she reached the fence. The buggy cut through the dust like a blade. The children had gone quiet inside, peering through the slats of the window. The oldest held the middle child's hand. The youngest stood barefoot on the hearth, eyes wide. Ada opened the door and stepped outside. The woman didn't wait for greetings. She stopped the buggy, climbed down, and walked straight to the porch. "You are Ada Granger?" "I am. I've come to retrieve what you stole." Ada crossed her arms. "I didn't steal them. I paid for them." "You paid for silence, for control, for a lie. But one of those children is mine, by right and by memory." Ada narrowed her eyes. "Memory is a strange thing to gamble with." Sister Merritt opened her satchel and pulled out 3 folded sheets of paper. Baptism records, illness logs, discipline notes, all signed, all dated. "The children escaped my orphanage 7 weeks ago, and they've been wandering ever since." "They were sold," Ada said, "like sacks of potatoes. They ran, because they didn't understand the discipline required for their salvation." Ada's voice dropped. "Or because they were afraid." Sister Merritt didn't flinch. "I demand to see them. They're not yours to demand." Sister Merritt stepped forward. "I remember the middle one. Wouldn't speak for months, but she hummed a tune when she slept. It was always the same, Hickory Hill or something like it. She called it Mama's Song." Ada's breath caught. The children had hummed that once, late one evening, softly, almost like a prayer, the tune she used to sing while washing their hair. Sister Merritt's face tightened. "I taught them obedience. I fed them scripture and rules. But that melody, it never left her." Ada's voice wavered. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying one of them remembers you. And the others? They followed her like ducklings." A pause. "Heavy. Maybe they're not all yours, but one is." The door creaked open, and the middle child stepped outside, barefoot, head high, not afraid. She looked at Sister Merritt, then at Ada, then said, "You're not my mother." The words cut the air like a knife. But then she turned and looked straight at Ada. "You are." Ada felt her knees nearly give. Sister Merritt blinked. "You don't remember." "I remember warmth. I remember someone who never screamed. I remember eggs and jam and a woman who used to braid my hair and tell me it would grow strong again." She pointed to Ada. "That's her." Sister Merritt stepped back, caught off guard. "And the others?" she asked, quieter now. The child looked down. "They're mine. I kept them with me. I shared my food. I wiped their noses. I told them stories when they cried." She looked back up. "I'm not leaving them." Silence. Not even the wind moved. Then Ada stepped forward and knelt. "You're not going anywhere." The girl fell into her arms, and Ada held her like something she thought she'd lost forever. Sister Merritt stood for a long time at the edge of the porch. The sun had dipped low, turning the dirt gold. Her face cracked, just slightly. "I only wanted them safe," she said. Ada looked up. "Then leave them where they're loved." The other 2 children stepped outside now, together, the youngest holding the eldest's hand. And slowly, like a curtain falling after a long play, Sister Merritt lowered her eyes and turned. She climbed back in her buggy, didn't say another word, and drove off into the dust. That night, Ada couldn't sleep. She sat near the hearth while the children snored gently on their pallets. The middle one stirred, opened her eyes and whispered, "You believe me now?" Ada nodded. "I think I always did." The girl smiled and reached out her hand. Ada took it. Tears came, finally. But they weren't bitter. They were soft, slow, warm. the kind that only fall when something broken finally starts to mend. And in the silence that followed, she began to hum, Hickory Hill. The tune carried lightly across the cabin, and all three children turned toward the sound in their sleep. Not afraid, not alone, just home. Spring came slow to the ridge that year. The frost lingered longer than usual, biting at the wild beans and stalling the orchard buds. But Ada didn't complain. She watched the weather like an old friend with bad habits, knowing it would soften eventually. And when it did, everything bloomed at once. The children had taken to naming things. The chickens, the trees, even the fence posts. Anything that stayed longer than a day got a name. But the biggest change came one quiet morning when the oldest child, tall, serious, always watching, stood beside Ada with a folded scrap of paper. She handed it over gently. Ada opened it. Inside was a single sentence, written in crooked letters. "Can we keep our names now?" Ada blinked. "What names?" The girl reached into her apron pocket and pulled out 3 tiny stones. Each one had a name scratched in with a nail. Annie, June, Caleb. She pointed to herself. "I'm Annie." Then to the smallest. "That's June." Then to the tallest, him. The boy who never said a word until he whittled Ada a spoon and left it at her bedside without a note. "He's Caleb." Ada's eyes welled. She nodded. "Yes, you can keep them." Annie smiled. June ran barefoot through the garden shouting her name over and over again like it was a bird just released from a cage. "And Caleb?" He smiled too, just a little, but for him that was thunder. Ada taught them chores, taught them how to trim goat hooves, rotate planting rows, oil hinges, and collect eggs without startling the hens. Some days they worked hard. Others, they just sat under the apple tree while Ada read aloud from a book she thought she never open again. Tom Sawyer, missing its back cover and dog-eared from long ago. Caleb liked the raft parts. June liked when Ada did the voices. And Annie, she just liked to listen, like the words were healing something invisible inside her. Town changed slowly. Mrs. Kendall didn't speak to Ada, but she stopped scowling. Harriet Morrison started slipping extra flour into her orders. Quietly, no words exchanged. Even the church softened. Not Reverend Colby exactly, but the congregants. One Sunday, a hymn was chosen that Ada had never heard. When she asked where it came from, a child whispered, "Annie hums it when she thinks no one's listening." Ada smiled, then joined in the second verse. Years passed. The cabin grew. Caleb built an addition on the east side when he turned 15. His own room, with shelves he carved himself and a window that looked out over the goat pasture. June planted a wildflower garden behind the barn and named every petal. Annie learned to sew, then to write, then to read faster than Ada could keep up. The schoolteacher said she had a mind like lightning, quick, bright, gone before you could grasp it all. She didn't speak much about her memories, but she began drawing them. Little pictures, lined in charcoal and faded reds. Cabin in flames. A rope swing by a creek. Hands. So many drawings of hands holding other hands. And one she gave Ada one quiet autumn morning. A simple sketch. Ada sitting on the porch, book in lap, arms open wide. The 3 children running toward her, bare feet in grass, faces turned to sunlight. "I don't remember everything," Annie said softly, "but I remember how you felt." Ada held the paper like scripture. She didn't need anything more. 10 years later, when people spoke of the woman on the ridge, they didn't say widow. They didn't say thief or witch or even that strange one who bought the orphans. They just said, Ada, the one who raised them, the one who stayed, the one who loved them, the one who believed their names before they could say them aloud. Caleb went on to apprentice with the blacksmith. June married the schoolteacher's son and taught little ones how to plant gardens with their names carved on rocks. And Annie? She stayed. Not because she couldn't leave, but because she didn't want to. She ran the ridge cabin like a homestead, took in strays, both animal and human, painted on old planks and taught reading under the apple tree. When Ada passed, she was there, held her hand, hummed Hickory Hill one last time as the wind turned gold. At her funeral, the preacher, an old man now, opened the Bible. But Annie stepped forward. She held nothing in her hands. She didn't read, didn't quote scripture. She just looked at the sky, then down at the patch of wildflowers blooming where Ada had been laid to rest, and said, "She didn't find us. We found her, and she let us stay. She let us belong." Then she knelt, placed 3 tiny stones on the grave. Annie, June, Caleb, names Ada never gave them, but claimed them with forever.